She said the quiet part out loud, and Kody Brown snapped. If you want to understand why a single sentence from Meri Brown's friend blew up the entire Sister Wives story, hang with me. This is no throwback, no replay of events from last week or last season, or even last week's promo for last season. This is the moment fans have waited for, and it's not from a wife or Kody, but from someone who has nothing left to lose. In front of Meri sits a friend from many years ago, one of close proximity, one of observation and familiarity with the family. When the moderator asks a question seemingly almost innocent, the response flies across the table like a grenade. Is Robyn Brown submissive? No qualification, no sugarcoating, no trailing off in sub-question phrasings. Yes, and it matches Kody perfectly. In 5 words, stated matter. Of fact in explosive calm, and Kody goes off. In the time it takes for a blink of an eye, Kody comes back with not answering why it's inaccurate, not backing up with example after example of independence and strength, but pure, unadulterated anger. With no explaining why it's not true, no pointing out strength in other ways. In raw attack of the accusatory, calling her full of it. Blowing up, shutting down, it all speaks volumes in itself. This has never been about whether or not Robyn is shy and submissive. Not from a traits list, or from an interpersonal perspectives angle. Not from baked cookies, and from compromise on sofa color choices. It's all subterfuge for a power dynamic wrapping itself in other intentions than clear, shy, pretty, submissive. Those are not Meri's friends' choices of description. Those choices belong with Kody. Back in the earlier part of this season, Janelle Brown poked fun at Kody's description of new wife, Robyn, and sarcastically switched it up and retold it instead on herself. Now he has the shy, pretty wife. Yes, shy. Yes, pretty. None of us women were shy, so obviously it's type. Janelle was telling no tale of localized experience, but retold his story back at him in its own words. Now, with Meri's friend telling the same story of pointing out the pattern in simple declaration, Kody doesn't defend her active strength. However, he does not say, actually, Robyn challenges me all the time. He doesn't say, she's strong and independent. He explodes because this isn't an insult, it's a diagnosis, and naming the dynamic threatens to expose what it's actually been doing all along. Let's be very clear about what submissive means in this context, because it doesn't mean weak, it doesn't mean powerless, and it definitely doesn't mean losing. In the Brown family, submission hasn't been a sacrifice, it's been a strategy. And once you start looking at Robyn's position through that lens, everything changes. The houses, the money, the priorities, the way Kody fights, the way he withdraws, the way the other wives ended up with nothing, while one wife ended up with everything. This is why that one sentence hit so hard. This is why Kody reacted the way he did. And this is why the show can never go back to pretending this is just about love or compatibility. Because once the quiet part gets said out loud, you can't unhear it, and that's where the real story begins. Before anyone rushes to defend Robyn Brown, we need to slow this down and define terms. Because the reason this moment is so explosive is not because someone called Robyn submissive, it's because they named what that submission does. In most conversations, submissive is treated like a personality flaw or a moral failing. A woman who's quiet, agreeable, supportive, someone who lets her husband lead, someone who doesn't push back. But that definition doesn't explain outcomes. And outcomes are the only thing that matter when you're trying to understand power. So let's be clear about what submission means in this family. It does not mean quietly supporting your husband while sacrificing your own needs. It does not mean accepting less. It does not mean suffering in silence. In the Brown family, submission has meant something very different. It has meant appearing to want nothing while getting everything. It has meant positioning yourself as following Kody's lead, while Kody follows wherever you steer him. It has meant letting Kody feel like the decision maker, while every decision somehow lands in your favor. That is not weakness. That is leverage. This begins where Meri's friend's statement crossed from controversial into dangerous territory. It did not stop at saying Meri is submissive. It added that it is effective for Kody. That is the important thing. It's effective for Kody because it allows him to feel powerful. It allows him to feel as if he is in control. It ensures his own sense of self, of being the patriarch, the leader, the provider, and the decider. It makes him feel as if he isn't being controlled, but instead adored, required, and trusted. While Kody takes all of this in and feels as if he's the man in power, appearances say otherwise. Think about it. Robyn came into the family with debt, tens of thousands of dollars worth. She did not bring money, business, work, or communality. She brought vulnerability, she brought need, she brought softness, and it was from this place that she found herself in the largest houses, with the best financial situation, the most protection, the most stability, the most of Kody women, who were direct, resourceful, outspoken, or self-sufficient, were depicted as problematic, demanding, unhelpful, or disrespectful. To submit did not mean to lose strength to Robyn, it was to conceal it. And that is precisely why the word makes people uncomfortable. We learn to associate submission with loss, but what happens in this situation is that the possibility that the quickest way to win is with submission, that the appearance of being powerless is actually the most powerful move on the board, is what Meri's friend has implied, and that is a threat to the entire narrative that Kody has established for himself for the past 15 years. If the one that is submitting to him is actually doing it to gain influence, what that means is that Kody has not been leading this family, he has been reacting to it. Which brings us on to the next question. The one Kody does not want people asking. If submission has been so successful, he asks, who has actually paid the price for not being submissive? But once you recognize that submission is a strategy rather than an attribute, the Brown family's story begins to shift. The question's no longer why Robyn received so much. The problem with everyone else being left with nothing is simple. Meri, Janelle, and Christine did not fail at plural marriage. They failed at delivering the type of womanhood Kody actually values. Meri valued order. Rules and rain checks, and the notion of contribution securing safety. Meri was the first wife, or the legal wife, or the wife of foundation. It had importance. Decades passed, and Meri continued to deliver. She stayed and followed the system and spoke up when things weren't feeling right and requested discussions regarding finances and emotional investment. Loyalty and dedication would be rewarded, or so what passed for her logic expected. Meri was no submissive, soft-spoken partner. Instead, she was straightforward. In Kody's universe, direct translates into pressure, not protection. Meri sits alone and abandoned, and in rentals and alone foots her child's college tuition, and sees her own legal status eroded, while simultaneously sees her claims to sagging resources abandoned in tandem with it all. Decades of loyalty and investment made for nothing, but Janelle did it differently. Independent down, to earth, competent. She'd worked almost her entire life pouring her money into the family pot. She knew how to manage money. She raised 6 children alone. She brought home equity, hard cash, to invest in family projects. Janelle didn't need much, since she could provide for herself. And that was the rub to Kody. Janelle didn't need him. She didn't need him for her strength. She didn't need him for her rescue. He could disregard her interests without qualm. Her independence became a reason for him to abandon her. She found herself living in that RV, on that raw land, watching the funds she helped provide go towards another woman's comfort. Christine was the most emotionally honest of the three. She articulated her feelings of being avoided, of jealousy, of the need for time, for reassurance. She was not submissive either. She spoke out. And in a world that damns the truth, the brunt of that reality landed squarely on her shoulders. She was diagnosed as dramatic, jealous, troublesome, the basement wife who should be content with whatever she received. But when her demands were not met for so long, the ultimate crime was committed. She moved out. She moved out with little of anything. Her share of Coyote Pass sold off in the bargain for the low price of leaving. Robyn did not carry the long, painful labor of emotional work, or the toll of funds being contributorily poured into the pot for decades, with no net to catch them. But now look at the others. Robyn did not challenge Kody to change the game. She did not challenge him for equality. She did not challenge him for equality, or for a fair share. She posed herself to benefit from being thankful, vulnerable, and in need of protection, and a whole family, not just a husband. And she claimed the houses, the help, the precedent priority status, and the marriage. But this is not isolated. There is a pattern here. Those women who told the truth lost. The one who comported herself well with submission won. That is what Meri's friend revealed to get the truth out. Thus the question becomes more complicated. If Robyn's submission earned her security, wealth, and prioritized status, was it indeed submission? Or was it the domination of a system that was built to award her just that? And if you want to know who actually has the power in the family, you don't listen to the words. You watch the money. You watch who is being protected. You watch whose comfort is being treated as an emergency. And every time that string is followed in the Brown family, it leads to one person, Robyn. Let's extract the emotions and leave the facts and consequences. Robyn brought a total of approximately $32,000 of her own debts into the family. She did not bring money, real estate, or financial influence. She brought a problem, and this became a problem for the family. But instead, that debt constrained Robyn's life. It became the launching point for her ascent. Whereas Janelle dedicated her life outside the house, Robyn did not. Whereas Meri started businesses, worked on her own, Robyn did nothing. Whereas Christine raised 6 children on her own, Robyn could rely on a nanny, during a pandemic, to care for 2 children old enough for schooling. Let that sink in. Whereas all the other wives were stretched too thin. Emotionally, financially, Robyn's lifestyle, her comfort, wasn't just tolerated. It was deemed imperative, unnegotiable, something Kody would fight for. And he did, more for Robyn's housing needs than for anyone else's. He claimed because he sparked jealousy, because he was so willing to fight so hard to keep Robyn safely kept. Safely kept. These are important words. They reveal whose fragility is important to Kody, who needs to be protected, and who gets priority in the name of comfort. Robyn got the large homes while Meri got the rentals. Robyn got the 5-bedroom house purchased with the down payment from the selling of Meri and Janelle's homes. Robyn now lives in the multi-million-dollar house while her other wives rent, repair, or move on with nothing different than when they first began. Robyn's sister wives paid for college with personal hard work and earned dollars. Janelle tapped into retirement funds in order to survive. Christine walked away with nothing but freedom of emotion, but not pocket changes. Robyn got the assets. And this is when the unraveling of the story truly begins to begin. Robyn, as the supposedly compliant woman, would not have gotten the bulk of the good stuff. Robyn would not have gotten the nannies, and the other wives would have to survive on rainwater alone. Robyn would not have had the husband's financial focus on her, but smart women do. Smart women know the trick of looking like low-maintenance satellites so that the husband invests in the cause. Smart women know how to let the husband think he gets the reward so that he'll work tenaciously hard for her, regardless of the demands she laid upon him in the first place. Robyn never had to make the request for the house purchase. Robyn never had to make the request for financial security either. Robyn never had to make the request for special treatment either because of her better than every own else hip status either. And it's because of that reason that Meri's friend's statement is so ominous, because it changes the reason behind every financial purchase choice, every household dispute, every priority not of passion but of consequence in general, because with so much submission obtained, submission becomes the means to an end. And so the question becomes not an option the reader can live with, but one it cannot either, because it cannot stay silent in the face of the question of, with so much submission with no reward requested in the first place. Why did the husband work twice as hard to please the requesting party? When someone asserts a false idea about you or your spouse, there are plenty of calm and level ways of responding. You set the record straight. You offer examples. You lay out what the context is. You describe what people are missing. That's not how Kody Brown reacts in this situation. When Meri's friend asserts that Robyn is submissive, and this is what works for Kody, his reaction springs right away and is full of passion. He takes no time. He takes no moment of reflection. He has not engaged the statement itself, but has gone right on the offensive. He has accused her of being full of it. He has destroyed her credibility. He has lost it himself, and dramatically so. and this reaction has more meaning than any kind of defense he might mount, because rage is not what people express in reaction to a lie, but what someone feels who knows a truth they want kept hidden. And this truth has been named. If Robyn wasn't so submissive, that is, if she frequently pushed back against Kody, disputed him, had her own way, was independent, then the argument might be easy to make. Well, actually, Robyn's very assertive. She fights with me every day. She doesn't yield to me the way you might expect. Kody doesn't make such claims. Can't make such claims. It would blow the whole narrative he's maintained for so long, namely that he's the one calling the shots. That favoritism equals love. That Robyn just accepts what Kody decides to dole out to her. None of it works unless Robyn presents herself on paper, unless she can be characterized as someone things happen to rather than someone who makes things happen. So when Meri's friend says that submission is functional, neither flattering nor insulting, simply a fact, Kody's sense of self gets knocked off kilter. Either he isn't the patriarch he takes himself to be if his wife's submission is in fact strategic, or he's the mark in this situation, and it's this last bit that he cannot stand. A man like Kody does not take well to being told he's being led along without his noticing it. Their power has not been diminished. Their power feels real. Robyn's submission allows Kody to think all of that is true. Her tears make him feel needed. Her gratitude makes him generous. Her submissive behavior makes him respected, and in turn, he provides her with everything, which explains why an advocacy of Robyn's power would be perilous to Kody. If Robyn has power, then she has responsibility. If she has responsibility, then she is accountable. And then, of course, favoritism ceases to be random and becomes deliberate. So rather than defending Robyn, Kody defends the illusion. The person pointing to the problem gets undermined, because the problem itself can't be disassembled. Viewers understand all of this intuitively. People intuitively understand the concept that truth doesn't have to yell. Truth can be vocal with a capital V. But lies have to be defended. That is why an eyebrow raising revelation has so much resonance, not dramatic, but diagnosable. It shows exactly where the problem lies. The problem isn't with submission. Revelation is. Now that the mechanism has been identified, a much larger problem has been introduced. If Robyn's tactic has so much resonance, what does that mean about the system in place? The truth is this: in a certain type of system, the member with what appears to be the least power ends up with the most. That is not ideology, that is psychology. And the Brown family has been a living laboratory for this principle for 15 years. Kody Brown is not a man who responds to strength in the way that others do. He does not reward independence. He does not protect and safeguard competence. He does not raise up women who can stand on their own 2 feet. He rewards women who make him feel indispensable. He keeps them in a position of dependence on him. He keeps them needing him. He keeps them needing him to protect them, to keep them safe from others and from themselves and from the world. And for every response to that need on Kody's part, he receives something precious in return. Validation. Robyn's submission is not passive. It is adaptive. She reflects Kody's needs back to him. She reflects him to himself. His authority is reflected back to him by Robyn. He sees himself in their relationship, and she is a reflection of that vision. And in that quiet way, she steered every choice he made. That is the rhythm of their dynamic. The submissive partner doesn't issue orders. They shape the conditions. They cast needs as vulnerabilities instead of demands. They let the other person decide to put them first, because that feels better than being told what to do. So when Robyn needed a big house, it wasn't framed as entitlement. It was framed as security. When Robyn needed help with the kids, it wasn't framed as weakness. It was framed as overwhelm. When Robyn needed emotional attention, it wasn't framed as favoritism. It was framed as fragility, and Kody reacted exactly the way someone like him tends to react. He fought. He fought for Robyn's house. He fought for Robyn's comfort. He fought for Robyn's peace. Not because she demanded it, but because she made him feel like a hero for providing it. The other wives couldn't compete because they weren't playing the same game. Meri tried to push fairness. Janelle tried to be independent. Christine tried to be emotionally honest. None of those moves made Kody feel powerful. They left him feeling challenged, pressured, or unnecessary. In a patriarchal setup, those feelings get punished. So while the other wives pursued partnership, Robyn was building influence. While they asked for equality, Robyn offered deference. While they named problems, Robyn presented herself as the fix to Kody's wounded ego. That is why submission worked. Not because Robyn lacked agency, but because she used it in a way that stayed unseen. Power that shouts gets resisted. Power that hides behind gratitude gets rewarded. And this is the crucial bit that makes Meri's friend's remark shake the ground. Because once you see submission as performance, rather than personality, you start noticing every moment differently. You notice the pauses, the tears, the soft voice, the steady assurance that Kody is right. None of it is accidental, and none of it is harmless, because each time Kody chose Robyn, he wasn't just choosing love. He was choosing the version of reality that made. He feels the strongest. And Robyn was the only wife willing to shape that reality for him. That brings a hard question to the table. One Kody probably hopes viewers never ask. If Robyn's submission has been this effective, was the family ever truly equal? Plural marriage, in essence, holds out a promise of equality, not love or passion. It holds out a promise that love can be duplicated, time shared equally, attention and resources partitioned equally, none of the wives getting favored because the nature of the system precludes favoritism itself. But this has never been a reality in itself because this holds well on paper but not in actuality. And this comes crumbling as soon as real human psychology is involved, especially of a man like Kody Brown in this instance. Equality in the Brown family never came from a predetermined system. It had to, and could only, follow Kody's control, his ability to rein himself in, to control himself, to override his own emotional needs in order to treat them all more equally. And that, it wasn't going to happen. Because Kody knows how to allocate resources, not in an equitable way, but in an emotional way, based on who supports him emotionally, on who supports him in order to build his ego up. So when Robyn stepped into the family, the dynamic didn't change because she wanted more of the pie. It changed because she stirred the pot. Robyn neither dared to break the rules of the group. Robyn made the rules seem redundant. Robyn neither questioned the need for equality in the group. Robyn simply avoided it, which made the other four wives redundant the moment. Robyn figured out the emotional equation of the family. The system would keep Meri safe because she had followed it. As the first wife, as the first in line, as the woman who laid the roots of the relationship, she believed in the ideology. Janelle trusted that merit would be earned, and that work, sacrifice, money made in the real world would result in security. In respect, she trusted the math. Christine trusted that emotional truth would bind the family better, that stating the pain would bring healing. She trusted the relationship. But Robyn didn't share this faith. She loved Kody, not as a concept of a husband or a father, but as a focal point in which all else revolves. She understood that in Kody's world, every other thing is centered on his feelings and needs. This is how equality fell apart. A system of equality requires a set of rules. Rules fail when emotions overshadow ideals. And once one exception was allowed, the rest followed suit almost by instinct. This house feels different. This situation feels singular. This wife seems to need more, right now, and suddenly, nothing stayed equal. But the heart of it all, the part viewers are only now fully getting, was this: the system needed Robyn to appear submissive for it to work. If Robyn were openly assertive, favoritism would leak out. If she demanded more openly, the other wives would have solid grounds to call it out. If she challenged Kody in public, he'd push back. Submission wasn't the absence of power. It was the disguise that made inequality palatable. It let Kody cast every unequal outcome as his choice, his instinct, his love, his responsibility. Robyn didn't gain from favoritism. She gained from Kody's generosity, or so the story goes, and that story shielded everyone from admitting the truth. The family wasn't failing because plural marriage is hard. It was failing because power was quietly being consolidated. By the time the other wives saw the game was rigged, it was already done. The assets distributed, the emotional bonds fractured, exits inevitable. Which circles back to why this moment matters so much. Meri's friend didn't accuse Robyn of wrongdoing. She didn't attack her character. She didn't cast her as a villain. She merely described the dynamic. And that description punctured the illusion that equality ever existed. For 15 years, the most important rule in the Brown family wasn't about marriage, religion, or loyalty. It was silence. Not total silence, but strategic silence. The kind where everyone knows something is wrong, but no one names it directly. Where discomfort is expressed, but the mechanism behind it is left untouched. Where grievances are framed as personal failings instead of structural problems. That silence protected the system. As long as the family pretended this was about personality clashes, or jealousy, or individual insecurity, no one had to confront the deeper truth. No one had to admit that favoritism wasn't an accident, that inequality wasn't a mistake, that submission wasn't innocence. And that's why this moment could only happen now, after the family has already fallen apart. When the wives were still together, there were consequences for speaking too clearly. Naming the pattern meant risking Kody's anger. It meant being labeled disloyal. It meant being accused of sabotaging the family, so everyone learned to speak around the truth. Meri questioned finances, but not the system. Janelle pointed out inequities, but framed them as temporary. Christine named favoritism, but internalized the blame. Robyn's role remained untouched, because as long as Robyn could be framed as different rather than strategic, the illusion could hold. She wasn't manipulating. She was just sensitive. She wasn't benefiting. She was just being protected. She wasn't winning. She was just being loved. That framing depended on everyone agreeing not to connect the dots. But now, the marriages are over. Meri is out. Christine is gone. Janelle has stepped away. The financial damage is already done. The emotional betrayals are documented. The footage exists. There's nothing left to protect. Which is why the tell-all format matters so much. This isn't a group conversation where Kody can dominate the room. It's one-on-one interviews, separate spaces, direct questions, no immediate shutdowns, no collective pressure to keep the peace. And the host does something subtle but powerful. She asks the question viewers have been asking without judgment. Is Robyn submissive? She doesn't frame it as an accusation. She doesn't imply wrongdoing. She simply names the trait that has been used to explain Robyn's position for years. And this time, someone answers honestly. Meri's friend doesn't soften it. She doesn't add disclaimers. She doesn't rush to reassure anyone. She just says what she sees, and adds the part no one ever says. That dynamic works for Kody. That's the line that breaks the spell, because it moves the conversation from who Robyn is to what her behavior does. And Kody knows exactly why that's dangerous. Because once viewers start thinking in terms of function instead of intention, everything shifts. Tears stop being evidence of innocence. Gratitude stops being proof of humility. Silence stops being neutrality. Silence becomes strategy. This is why Kody reacts the way he does. Not because he's offended, but because the protection silence provided is gone. The rules have changed. The system has been exposed. And once the system is visible, it can't operate the same way again. Which leads to the final, unavoidable question, the one hanging over this entire tell-all. What happens when the mechanism that's been driving everything is finally named? Accusations can be argued with. Opinions can be dismissed. But exposure changes the rules of the game entirely. That's why this moment hits differently. Meri's friend didn't accuse Robyn of manipulation. She didn't say Robyn is evil or calculating or malicious. She didn't even say Robyn is consciously doing anything wrong. She simply described how the system functions. And once a system is named, it loses its invisibility. And invisible systems are the most powerful ones there are. For 15 years, the Brown family dynamic depended on plausible deniability. Robyn could always say she never asked for special treatment. Kody could always say he was just following his heart. The other wives could always be framed as jealous or difficult or incompatible with plural marriage. Everyone had an explanation. No one had accountability. Exposure removes that protection, because now every choice gets reinterpreted. Every past decision gets reevaluated. Every tear, every fight, every housing decision, every financial sacrifice suddenly exists in a new context. Was Robyn overwhelmed? or positioning herself as fragile? Was Kody choosing freely, or responding predictably? Were the other wives failing, or refusing to perform submission? Once viewers start asking those questions, the old narrative can't survive. This is why Kody's anger escalates so quickly. He understands, even if only instinctively, that once the audience sees the mechanism, the magic is gone. The same behaviors won't be read the same way anymore. Robyn crying won't look like vulnerability. It will look like leverage. Kody fighting for Robyn won't look romantic. It will look transactional. The other wives' departures won't look like failures. They'll look like refusals to keep playing a rigged game. Exposure is dangerous because it doesn't tell people what to think. It teaches them how to think. And once that shift happens, you can't control interpretation anymore. That's why calling Jen full of it doesn't work, because he's not arguing with her logic. He's trying to stop the audience from adopting it, and you can see the panic underneath the anger. The realization that the narrative he's relied on, the one where he's the misunderstood patriarch and Robyn is the gentle, submissive wife, is no longer stable. The moment submission is recognized as power, the entire moral structure collapses. Suddenly, Robyn isn't the least powerful wife. She's the most effective one. Kody isn't the decision maker. He's the emotional engine being steered. The other wives aren't bitter. They're disillusioned. And here's the part that truly can't be undone. Once viewers recognize this pattern in the Brown family, they'll recognize it elsewhere too. In other relationships, in other systems, in other power dynamics where appearing powerless is rewarded more than honesty. That's why this moment matters beyond sister wives. It's not just gossip, it's a case study. And that brings us to the final piece. The question that hangs over this entire tell. All and refuses to go away. Now that the truth has been spoken out loud, does anything actually change? Here's the thing about truth. It doesn't explode. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand belief. It just sits there, undeniable, uncomfortable, impossible to put back where it was. Meri Brown's friend didn't expose Robyn with an accusation. She didn't need to. She did something far more destabilizing. She named the pattern calmly, plainly, without apology. Robyn is submissive. And that dynamic works for Kody. That sentence contains the entire story of the Brown family. Because once you understand submission as strategy rather than weakness, everything rearranges itself. The houses, the money, the priorities, the anger, the exits, the collapse. Kody's furious response isn't a defense. It's confirmation. You don't react with that much emotion to a harmless misunderstanding. You react like that when the scaffolding holding up yourself, image starts to crack. If Robyn were truly powerless, there would be nothing to expose. If Kody were truly in control, there would be nothing to fear. But the truth sits right in the outcomes. Submissive women don't end up in million-dollar homes while their sister wives rebuild from nothing. Submissive women don't receive constant protection while others are told to be more grateful. Submissive women don't walk away with security while honesty and independence get punished. Effective strategists do. Robyn understood the system she was entering. Whether consciously or instinctively, she recognized what Kody needed to feel powerful, chosen, admired, and she gave him that feeling consistently. In return, he gave her everything else. The other wives didn't lose because they were flawed. They lost because they refused to perform powerlessness. Meri believed in fairness. Janelle believed in contribution. Christine believed in honesty. And in a system that rewards submission over equality, those beliefs were liabilities. This is why the tell all feels different, not because of what's being revealed. Viewers have sensed this for years. But because it's finally being named on camera, to Kody's face, by someone who refuses to back down. Jen doesn't apologize. She doesn't soften her stance. She doesn't retreat. And Meri sits beside her, silent but steady, the weight of 15 years of observation behind that silence. The truth doesn't need embellishment. It doesn't need outrage. It doesn't need theatrics. It only needs to be said. Once the quiet part gets spoken out loud, the spell breaks. Now viewers will watch every interaction differently. Every tear will be examined. Every explanation will be questioned. Every decision will be traced back to its function, not its justification. Kody can rage. Robyn can cry. The narrative can shift and adapt. But the mechanism has been exposed. Submission wasn't Robyn's weakness. It was her greatest strength. And now that everyone can see it, the question isn't whether it was true. The question is whether the system can survive being seen at all. Because once you recognize the game, you can't unplay it, you can't unknow it, and you can't pretend it was ever something else. That's the real shocker, not that Robyn is submissive, but that submission, in this family, was the path to power all along.